Merry meet my fellow bookish witches. Welcome to Witchy Reads. Happy New Year! To celebrate the end of 2023, I decided I wanted to take a look back on some of the books I've read. Not necessarily to rank any of the books, but to rank the main characters within those books. In that vein, I have created this lovely tier list. I'm just going to quickly run through what I've created here. In 2023, I read 19 books. Of those 19 books, 14 of them were fiction. I want to go through each of those books' main characters and rank them in terms of how I enjoyed them, how I think they were written, if I think their story captivated me, and they had a decent character arc. The tiers I have created are I ardently admire and love you. Below that, I would die for you, but I won't live for you. Then middle of the road, we have mediocrity has allowed me to float by. Moving down, we have some people inspire, others conspire, and the lowest level, I could start my own religion based on how much I dislike you. I am going to go book by book in the order that I read them, and I am going to rank those books' main characters. The first book that I read in 2023 was The Geek Who Saved Christmas by Annabeth Albert. Gideon Holiday, who is the main character. What can I say about this character? He is obsessed with Christmas. He is interested in his next door neighbor. It is a romance novel, and the trope is help me prepare for the holidays because I'm kind of a Scrooge, and then in the process they fall in love. It's very straightforward, a little smutty, but all in all, I do think the main character of Gideon Holiday is a very cute character. I didn't mind him too much. The only thing I disliked was how most romance stories go is the third act conflict was really weak in this story. It was an easy 2-minute tops conversation, could have fixed it. I am going to go ahead and put Gideon in the I would die for you, but I won't live for you. His love interest is Paul Frost. I don't think this was a bad character. They didn't bother me in any particular way. I do think the whole setup of him being kind of this Scrooge character and not really being into Christmas fell a little flat. It was a little weak. I understand it is a rom-com / romance that took place during Christmas, so it needed kind of that Christmas element. For him, because I just didn't find him as interesting as Gideon, I'm going to go ahead and place him in the mediocrity has allowed me to float by. Next, we have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. The main character is Viv. I absolutely love her. I think she had a fantastic character arc from being this warrior character who spent her life fighting and then decides to basically uproot her entire life and begin a small coffee business in this town, particularly in a town that has no idea what coffee is because we're in the land of Dungeons and Dragons. I cannot tell you how much I loved this book and how much I loved this character. Definitely she is going up to the I ardently admire and love you. Of course, we have her love interest, which is Tandri. She is really sassy. What I really liked about this character was her loyalty to Viv, but then also her very positive influence on her. Viv made it very clear what her intentions were and that she wanted to hang up her sword, that the coffee shop was now her life, and that she wanted to focus on that and had no intention and had no desire to go back to fighting. And anytime there was an opportunity that presented itself where it looked like Viv may have to pick up the sword, Tandri was there to gently remind her that this is not the lifestyle she wanted. She was an amazing love interest. I love them together. She is definitely going up with Viv to the I ardently admire and love you. The next book I read was Bunny by Mona Awad. So the main character is Samantha. Samantha irked me to no end. If I were to describe this character, she is nails on a chalkboard for me. I don't think she had a very strong character arc. There was a lot of unanswered things. It would have made me more invested if certain other things had happened in the story. But I didn't necessarily hate her. It was more of an annoyance. For her, she is going to be some people inspire, others conspire. Then along with her, we have the group of women, the bunnies. They are the absolute worst. I cannot stand them. Their characters made sense. I do wish certain things had been changed or the author had gone in a different direction to make me more invested in the characters. And to that end, I am going to go ahead and put them with Samantha in Some People Inspire, Others Conspire. The next book I read was Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance by Ruth Emmy Lang. We have the main character of Waylon, who was orphaned and then raised by wolves. Waylon has magical properties, can basically speak to animals, control the weather. The one thing I really enjoyed about this book was how it was never from Waylon's point of view. It was from people who met him through the journey of his life. A very unique way to tell the story in that we were never getting it from his perspective. We were getting it from the perspective of all these people. We were relying on these narrators to explain Waylon to us. Towards the end of the book, we do kind of get Waylon's point of view. When that happened, and then adding everything together in the book, you realize that there really isn't much to the character. As cute as this book is, it just didn't hit the right feeling for me in terms of the character. Waylon, he definitely falls in the mediocrity has allowed me to float by. He's definitely middle of the road tier. Quite honestly, I also feel the same for his love interest, Mary. Certain choices could have been made. She wasn't as fleshed out as Waylon. She kind of plays the part of one of the narrators that we see Waylon through. I would say out of all the narrators that follow Waylon, she was definitely the weakest to me. She is gonna go ahead and be with Waylon in the mediocrity has allowed me to float by. The next book I read was Outlawed by Anna North, and this was my least favorite read of this year. It hurts me to know that I picked this for one of my book club choices. It is not a good book. A lot of the problems in it deal with the white savior trope. There's racism, there's homophobia, and there's definitely some subtle transphobia in the story as well. All of that combined just made it really hard to read. In the character of Ada, all of the bad things that I just mentioned become manifest. I could not stand this character. She was pointless to the plot as far as the gang that she ends up joining. She isn't a good person, and she definitely feels like she is entitled and is better than the other women. For that reason, she is definitely down here in the I could start my own religion based on how much I dislike you. The next book I read was Riley Weaver Needs a Date to the Gaybutante Ball by Jason June. Riley Weaver is our main character. This is a cute YA LGBTQ story. It definitely gives me Xana Don't vibes. I actually really love it. I love that there's kind of this world building. It's almost like an alt reality of what the world could be if we allowed people to just be who they are. In the midst of all this, we have Riley, who is trying to be a famous podcaster, and he feels that the best way to go about this is to participate in the Gaybutante Ball and the festivities surrounding that. He ends up making a bet. The terms of the bet involve him being able to find a date to the Gaybutante Ball. I enjoyed it. It's one of those things where while it was a good book, it very much was an eye-opener for me in that I think I have moved past certain YA stories. Not to say that the story is bad. I definitely feel that if you are into YA, particularly if you want a good LGBTQ story, this is definitely a cute read. It just proved to me that I have grown beyond YA a little bit, or I need to find very specific types of YA to enjoy still. I do think it's still a good book, and I did enjoy the character of Riley. I'm going to put Riley up at the I would die for you, but I won't live for you. The next book I read was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han, and we have 3 characters. We have the main character and 2 love interests because we can't have a YA without a love triangle. I watched the TV show and I really enjoyed it. And so I wanted to pick up the book and just see if there was anything different, like if it filled in any gaps. And quite honestly, the TV show did a really good job at adapting, filled in a lot of the gaps that the book didn't have, which I appreciated. In this instance, I wouldn't say that the show is, amazing compared to the book, but I do prefer the TV show over the book simply because I feel like it expanded on the book. The main character in this story is Belly, and she is a teenager who goes to a beach house every summer with another family. In that family are two brothers. This is the first summer that I guess she's not a beast. The brothers take notice and they both are vying for her attention. I do take umbrage with the fact that the book is called The Summer I Turned Pretty. There were a lot of times in the book that the main character was told by different characters how pretty she is now. That bothers me. I can't imagine that it was so drastic a change to continuously remind the audience just how much of an ugly duckling she was before and how pretty she is now. For the character of Belly, I really enjoyed her. I think she is a very strong character. Any weaknesses that she has in terms of her character growth are purely because she is a teenager and it makes sense for her character. I believe in the story she's supposed to be 16, 17, somewhere around there, and I feel her personality is right on the mark. And there are even some instances where she's really good about standing up for herself, voicing her opinions, and I really enjoyed reading her. So I am going to go ahead and put her in the I would die for you, but I won't live for you. And then of course we have Conrad and Jeremiah, her two love interests. While Conrad had his reasons for behaving the way he did, I cannot abide by a man who has issues expressing his emotions. And until Conrad gets some therapy, he is going in that I could start my own religion based on how much I dislike you. The red flags for this man. It was very frustrating. I get the appeal. I do. And I know there's a lot of Conrad fangirlies out there. Boy needs therapy. And until he does not deserve to be with anybody, especially Belly. Then of course we have Jeremiah. In the book, we don't get a lot of Jeremiah, which is a shame. This is definitely one of the instances where I feel like the TV show fleshed out the character a lot more. But as far as the book, I feel like we didn't get much, and it does kind of feel out of left field that he crushes on Belly. I'm putting him in the mediocrity has allowed me to float by. So he's above Conrad, but it's not that great. Honestly, I would love to see more growth from both of these male characters to convince me that they deserve being with Belly. Next, we have The Stradivarius by Ray Knowles. We have the main character of May, and I personally feel like she is not a very strong character. She was written in such a way that made her extremely weak to the situation that was happening. Now, I realize there were situations in the story beyond her control. All in all, I feel like the character could have been written just slightly stronger, like make her just a little bit stronger. May is gonna go to Some People Inspire, Others Conspire. Her love interest is Ollie. I preface that because they technically don't get together until the very end, but Ollie is a presence throughout the story and it very much is involved in May's life and tries to help her on a regular basis. They are amazing. Even though they are not a strong character, much like May, the difference here is that Ollie is written in such a way that even though things are hard and they realize that maybe they shouldn't be doing certain things, they still are willing to do it for love, for just being a good person. And I really loved that. So I'm going to put Ollie in the I would die for you, but I won't live for you. Next, we have One Day by David Nichols. Now, I wouldn't say this is the absolute worst book I read, but these two characters, which there's not really, they're kind of both the main character and both the love interest, since we follow both characters and they end up having a relationship together. The book itself isn't the worst. The relationship between these two characters absolutely sucks. I do not like these two characters. I think they are elitist, spoiled, white bread, boring, beige oatmeal characters. The slightest inconvenience and their world crumbles. It was very frustrating to read the story, especially knowing what happens to the female character. Her character struggles the most throughout the book, and yet she has the most shittiest ending in this story. There is a movie adaptation. I have not seen it. I know who is cast as the characters. It's Anne Hathaway and Jim Sturgis, which are two actors that I think are phenomenal and I think would have amazing chemistry together. I almost feel like that is intentional because of how unlikable these characters are. You need to cast actors that are extremely likable to even make this movie. In saying that, I'm just gonna go ahead and put both Emma and Dexter in the I could start my own religion based on how much I dislike you. And then I read Let the Woods Keep Our Bodies by E.M. Roy, and boy oh boy was that a burst of fresh air. I absolutely adore this book and I loved the characters of Leo Bates and Tate Mulder. I think they had the most adorable, realistic, healthy for teenagers relationship. And I loved that in the midst of them dealing with kind of this teenage angst, there's the mystery of Tate's disappearance, of what's going on in the woods in their small town horror. There's mention of cryptids, Bigfoot. I also made a video on this just because of how much I loved this book. We're gonna go ahead and start with Leo. I think she was an amazing character. She is strong, she is loyal, and the love she has for Tate is so fierce. You dream of having someone love you that much. And so for Leo, she is going up here with the I ardently admire and love you. And then of course we have Tate. And what I love about Tate is her fascination with the mystery that's going on in her town, that nothing really seems to slow her down. Her end goal is she wants to solve this mystery because she feels it will help everybody in her town. So while she does have this obsessive personality, there is good intention behind what she is doing, and that makes her great. I particularly loved the way that she kind of sought out Leo and started their friendship, which led to a relationship, how she came out. It was just all great. I love her. She's going up with Leo in the I ardently admire and love you. Then we have the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. And okay, I am not a fan of Grady Hendrix. I do not find his books particularly scary. I do not find them particularly well written. I do not think he writes women characters well. That is shown brightly in the character of Lynette in the Final Girl Support Group. This character, quite honestly, I would say she is boring along with annoying. There is no consistency with her character arc. Things that are set up early on in the book, they do not follow through, and the things that change, it's not growth. It literally is 180s. It just doesn't make sense. And I cannot tell you how frustrated that made me when I'm reading this. I'm following along with this character, and all of a sudden they are doing things and making choices that do not make sense and what was established for that character. Because of that, I am putting Lynette down with the I could start my own religion based on how much I dislike you. And then with Lynette in that book is the rest of the women in the Final Girl Support Group. They are all variations of the same woman. It really was frustrating because I feel like it was a cop-out for Hendrix to not flesh out these characters. I feel like the story could have done a lot better if he had done that. It would also have done better had he taken the horror tropes that he's clearly a fan of and created his own horror stories for each of the women instead of relying heavily on horror stories, particularly horror movies that already exist in real life. It just felt lazy to me. I didn't necessarily dislike the characters. I just wish that they had gotten more, that they were more fleshed out and they were more unique to the different horror tropes that were assigned to them, which was disappointing for me. For me, I am going to put them in the some people inspire, others conspire. Next, we have A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon by Sarah Halley. We have the main character of Mariel, who I love. She is a nature witch. She is a klutz, but she is also extremely passionate and powerful. You see through her love interest of Oz just why he falls in love with her, because she's just an amazing character. And I also love that she grows as a character and is able to stand up and defend herself in the few areas where she felt the weakest. The only weak point in the book, that third act conflict, I do not think it was as weak as The Geek Who Saved Christmas. In that conflict, the characters almost seemed like they were being counterintuitive to the personalities we had become accustomed to. Even though I really liked Mariel, I'm going to have to put her in the I would die for you, but I won't live for you. And then we have Oz, her love interest. I do think his motivations and his character arc are very interesting. I like the fact that because he, spoiler alert, has the human soul within him, that is a warlock, that in addition to gaining human feelings, he gains the magic of the warlock, and then ultimately is able to be mortal to stay with Mariel at the end. I loved it. I do think he wasn't as fleshed out as Mariel, and I fully believe it's because Mariel is the main character and Oz is the love interest. I am going to go ahead and put him in the mediocrity has allowed me to float by. Second to last book is What Wild Women Do by Karma Brown. I listened to the audiobook for this story, which in looking at a lot of other readers, a lot of other reviewers, they all agree that if you're going to read this book, the audiobook is the best way to do it. And I wholeheartedly agree. I think the audiobook is very well done. It's two different voice actors who are voicing each of the main characters in the story, and they did a phenomenal job expressing the emotions in the story, bringing these characters to life. It was such an enjoyable experience reading this book, and quite honestly, I attribute my love to each of these characters to those voice actors reading the story. First, we have Rowan, who is living in modern time. She is a screenwriter. She is struggling to find her next story. And in the midst of being on a vacation with her red flaggy boyfriend, she discovers the story of Eddie Calloway and the feminist retreat camp that she used to run. In looking into it, she discovers that Eddie went missing. So there's kind of this mystery element. We're following along as she tries to discover it. And then we have flashbacks that go to Eddie Calloway, who is the woman who ran the camp and ultimately disappeared. I think the timelines mingle beautifully. I think the characters have parallels that are fantastic in terms of these women finding out who they are and what they want out of life. For Rowan, I'm definitely going to put her up with the I would die for you, but I won't live for you. There were just some things about the character that I think could have been a little bit stronger, but all in all, she was enjoyable. For Eddie Calloway, I loved this character. I loved the fact that in the 1970s, she was this trailblazer, this strong, vibrant, bisexual woman. Oh my God, just my hero. I loved her. So she is going up in the I ardently admire and love you. And finally, the last book I read of 2023 was Weyward by Amelia Hart. This book, similar to What Wild Women Do, has different timelines. The difference here is all the women are part of the same family, so they are all related. It's different generations, essentially. We are going to start with the earliest generation, which took place in 1619, and that character is Altha. We are introduced to her when she is being tried for witchcraft and murder. I do think a lot of things that happened with Alta were a little unrealistic, as far as a woman in 1619 being tried for murder and being able to get off. It just seemed highly unrealistic to me. It rang false with everything, especially with a lot of the other stuff that happened in this book. That is literally the only nice thing that happened to a female character in this book, which is a sad thing to say for a book that marketed itself as showing the resilience of women. For Alta, I think I am going to go ahead and put her in the mediocrity has allowed me to float by. The next timeline takes place in 1942, and we follow Violet. She is a teenager who is now pregnant with her distant cousin's child, and she is now being forced in a marriage that she doesn't want. She is this fiery spirit. She wants to know about her past because she doesn't know anything about her mother. We basically just follow her through this process of men trying to stifle her fire and her pushing back. Everything that happens to her is very depressing. While I do think the character is strong, it almost felt like she was a chess piece of the author, and the author was choosing to have all this horrendous stuff happen to her. I have to say, it did dampen my enjoyment of this character, despite her having this amazing personality and fighting back. She is going to go in the same spot as Alta for mediocrity has allowed me to float by. Then the last character of that book is Kate. Kate is pregnant by her abusive husband, who she is now running away from to a cottage that she inherited from her great aunt. And spoiler alert, her great aunt is Violet. She is now living in this cottage. She has run away from her husband. You would think that an abused woman would be enough, but no, we then find out that also Kate has been raped by her husband. So again, we have this situation where we have this character who has had horrendous stuff happen to them. I think I disliked this character a lot more than the other two women, simply because she felt the weakest. There were many choices that the character made that didn't make sense to me. Maybe it would make better sense to someone who has experienced something similar. I could just be the wrong audience for this particular character. I do think she could have been stronger. The main thing is that even if you are not strong to stand up for yourself, like the Violet character, you should be able to at some point ask for help. And there were many instances where Kate could have asked for help. She did end up telling certain people, but when the danger came for her, those people weren't able to get to her in time. So her plans just weren't the greatest. For the character of Kate, as much as I didn't necessarily dislike the character, I just didn't like what was going on in her life and the choices she made. So she is going to get down here with the some people inspire and others conspire. Here is my final tier list for the main characters of 2023. Thank you for indulging me as I went through this and processed my reading experience of 2023. In doing this, I feel like I can get a better picture. I did start this year feeling like it was lackluster, even though I had read Legends and Lattes. At one point, that was really the only good book I had read this year. So I'm glad that I got to pick up a variety of books in a variety of genres. I think I had a nice mix, and I can't wait to see what my 2024 reading list will be. As I mentioned, for this year, I read 19 books total. My goal for the year was to read 15, and this was before I had planned on creating this channel. So for next year, for 2024, I think I'm definitely going to up that number goal. I don't want to get too ambitious, but I also want to get into a groove of reading a lot of books. And thus far, I have enjoyed the amount of books that I have been reading. So I think for 2024, my goal is going to be 50 books. This year was 15. I think 50 is a good place to set my goal, especially since I'm going to be reading a lot more for me personally and also for this channel. If I exceed that next year, I will be impressed. If you've read any of the books that I read this past year, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to discuss any of these books with any of you. I think it's really great to get other people's perspectives. You may feel differently than I do, and please don't be shy. Let me know. I would love to talk to you about it. Until our next chapter together, Happy New Year, Merry Part, and blessed be.